Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, Karen demands I bring her kid on our family vacation. While my husband and I are childless and we have no desire to have kids of our own, we absolutely love spending time with our nieces and nephews. Among them are my brother's 11-year-old son, Alan, my 6-year-old niece, Ava, and my sister's 10-year-old daughter, Kelly. Last May, we planned a weekend trip to a beach town about an hour away with the kids. Our purpose was twofold: to bond with them and also to assess if they were ready for longer overnight trips. It was reassuring to know that we'd be within driving distance of home in case any of them needed to return early. My husband and I anticipated that Ava, being only 6, might have some difficulty staying overnight away from her parents. However, both she and Alan were well behaved throughout the trip. Unfortunately, Kelly misbehaved for the entire trip. Friday, we picked them up from their parents' houses around 5 and arrived at the beach town by 7. During the car ride, Kelly instigated and kept trying to start fights with Alan. At the grocery store, she wouldn't listen and refused to take turns with Alan and Ava to watch TV. Saturday, Kelly threw a fit because she wanted ice cream right away, but we had planned to go later. We offered her fruit as a snack, but she threw some of it in the trash until my husband intervened. At the beach, Kelly repeatedly filled the hole Ava was trying to dig with sand, despite us asking her to stop. She also tried to provoke fights with her cousins. During dinner, she was rude to our waitress and gave a sarcastic response when asked to apologize. Sunday, at the gift store, Kelly wanted both a conch shell and a mermaid doll, but didn't have enough pocket money for both. When we explained that she needed to choose one, she threw a fit and ended up with neither. Back at the hotel, Kelly ignored our request to help pack suitcases and kept trying to watch TV instead. During the car ride home, she continued to instigate fights with Alan and Ava. My husband and I had a serious talk with my sister about Kelly's behavior, and we decided that she wouldn't be invited on any more overnight trips with us. We've stuck to our decision, and it's upset my sister, who believes that we're being unfair to a 10-year-old. I understand that Kelly's just being a kid, but there's a reason we waited until the kids were older to go on these trips. At 10 years old, she's too old to constantly misbehave and throw tantrums like she's 4. My sister argues that Alan and Ava may be more mature and calm for their ages, and we shouldn't single out Kelly for not being an exception to her age. However, we believe that setting boundaries and holding her accountable for her actions is essential for her growth. My sister may be upset with our decision, but we're sticking to it because we want to encourage responsible behavior and respectful attitudes during our trips. We hope that in time, Kelly will learn and grow from this experience, and perhaps she can join us in the future adventures once she demonstrates better behavior. Not the jerk. You are Aunt and Uncle of the Year. Don't worry about your sister either. She's just upset that you're being a better parent to her kid by sticking to your word than she is capable of being. Not the jerk. They raised a brat. Now they have to deal with the consequences of that. My guess is that she still throws tantrums a lot of times at home, and they placate her by giving her whatever she wants. Also, being an only child likely hasn't helped. Am I the jerk for saying my wife made us look disgraceful? In the past year, I, male 42, have been fortunate to receive a promotion to a senior position at the engineering company I work for. With this new role came increased responsibilities and longer work hours, but on the positive side, my salary saw a significant boost, much to the delight of my wife, who's 40, and our 3 kids, who are 14, 14, and 10. The other day I was working from home, participating in an important Zoom meeting about an infrastructure expansion plan with around 30 people, including a government representative and the regional head of our firm. As an introverted person, public displays of affection have never been my cup of tea, so you can imagine my shock and embarrassment when my wife, who had just returned home, unexpectedly sat on my lap and started kissing me right in the middle of the call. My concentration was broken and I lost my train of thought, just as I was responding to a point made by the regional head. I'm pretty sure everyone on the call noticed too, given the awkward silence that followed. My wife eventually noticed my discomfort in the ongoing call, so she left the room. From that point on, it was challenging for me to regain composure and continue with the presentation. I found myself speaking too fast and even stuttering. A coworker, female 39, took over for me, and I didn't contribute much until the Q&A session. Towards the end of the call, when I mentioned my plans to refine the plan by the next meeting, the regional boss made a comment about my wife needing me more than they did, which further added to my humiliation. After the call, I confronted my wife about what had happened. Surprisingly, she didn't seem too bothered and even thought it was good for my colleagues to see me as a family man. She mentioned that she thought the webcam was off. I was frustrated and explained to her that her actions had made us appear disgraceful and immature, causing me great humiliation. However, my wife seemed taken aback and accused me of caring too much about what others thought of us. She even suggested that I might be embarrassed of her, which led to a heated argument, and she eventually locked herself in our room. Since then, we haven't spoken much, and I'm sleeping on the couch, feeling too ashamed to discuss this with anyone in my personal life. Am I the jerk? Update. When I returned to the office, I had a chance to speak with my director about the situation. He and most of my coworkers found the incident quite amusing, likely because I'm known as the stoic, reserved guy in our workspace. Later, I had a lengthy conversation with my wife, starting with an apology for overreacting. I expressed sentiments that I don't usually share, but knew she appreciated. She accepted my apology and apologized as well, admitting that she was also embarrassed and genuinely thought my webcam was off. She mentioned that her spontaneous action might have been aimed at conveying that I'm a family man to my coworkers. However, she did admit to feeling slightly uncomfortable with the fact I work so closely with some of my female colleagues. Finally, she expressed a desire for me to be more physically affectionate, which she felt had diminished due to my longer work hours. Things have cooled down by now, but I still can't shake off a slight sense of embarrassment about the whole incident. Am I the jerk for leaving after my mom kept joking about my childhood and calling me her practice kid? My, 19 mil, parents had me young and on accident. My childhood was nothing but money problems and listening to my parents fight with each other. Things only got better when my mom left my dad and started seeing my stepdad. He brought financial stability and is more of a father to me than my biological dad ever was. They have a daughter together, my sister Melody. I'm not blind. I know they shower her with attention and buy her everything they can because I never had anything when I was her age. When I was younger, it frustrated me to see her loved in a way that I never was, but now I know that my mom did her best with the experience and resources she had. It's just bad luck that it worked out the way it did. With that context out of the way, Melody recently turned 4 and my parents went all out. They invited not only all of the family in the area, but also some of Melody's friends from daycare and their parents. Once my mom and the other moms had a few drinks each, they started gossiping. The conversation, which I was not part of but was listening to because I was bored watching the kids, turned to sharing stories about their kids. My mom, instead of sharing cute stories about Melody, decided to tell a group of random moms about the time I tried to make my parents stop fighting by collecting change lying around the house and giving it to them. I was 7. She was laughing the whole time and ended the story with, "Ah, the things you learn with the oldest. Practice kids, am I right? My new husband and I never fight in front of Melody. I think that's why she's so much easier than OP." That story is a painful memory for me. I was so hurt that she thought it was so hilarious, but I didn't say anything and just tried to brush it off. The moms started talking about kindergarten because a few of them have kids who will be starting in the fall. My mom, who by then had had more than a few, decided that it would be a great idea to share the story of how she Karened the school into letting me do gym class in my winter boots because that was the one pair of shoes I had. Again, she told the whole story with a grin on her face and laughing. The last thing she said almost made me blow up. Thank goodness Melody can have all the shoes she wants. Though with how much crap OP pulled at that age, maybe it was best I didn't waste money on the practice kid. I texted my mom, "I'm glad you find how poor and miserable we were so funny, but it really upsets me you clearly think of me as a practice for Mel. I'm going, so someone should watch the kids." I then left without talking to anyone. When I got home, I checked my texts, and I found a rant from her, saying that they were her stories and that she felt that she could share them however she wanted to. She called me sensitive for not taking a joke and suggested I get a therapist. I already have one and she knows that, because I was jealous of a 4-year-old. She said I was rude for leaving. I was too upset to respond then, but after some thought, I may be in the wrong. Am I the jerk? Update. So the first thing I did was talk to my stepdad. Contrary to some of your assumptions, I don't live at my parents' house, so I asked him over to breakfast to talk on a day my mom had work, but I had off. He knows I usually plan around my mom's work schedule, so I think he knew it was serious beforehand. We sat down over eggs, and I told him what had happened. He had been doing something else at the time and was absolutely shocked. Apparently, my mom had told him a twisted version of events. According to him, she'd said that I had sent her an angry text because of a few harmless jabs, and that she was only kidding and didn't mean any harm. She also had conspicuously left out her drunken text to me. His reaction to the actual content of her jokes can only be described as a deep sadness and frustration. He offered me true support and affirmation, something that I could never picture my mom doing in a million years. My mom can be nice, but she's not great at anything deeper than platitudes. What did I ever do to deserve him? He was also completely blindsided by the fact that there was alcohol at the party. Apparently, he had left the planning to her and had no idea. I told him that I want to go very low contact with my mom for a bit and asked for his help to see him and Melody without having to deal with her. He said that he understood and agreed to have me over when she's not around. He told me he would get my mom help with her emotions and her drinking, and I told him that she probably wouldn't cooperate and promised to help him get her the help she needs in what ways I can. A half hour after my stepdad left, I texted my mom the following. Hey Ma, I've mulled over what happened at Mel's party, and I've come to the realization that our relationship is not healthy. You put me down for things that weren't my fault and laugh at how you and my biological dad messed up my childhood. It hurts to hear you speak about me like that, and I don't think you understand exactly how much. I've also come to the understanding that you serving alcohol at the party without even telling Dad isn't normal. This isn't a one-time thing, and you've been doing it too much. You have two problems, and until you get some serious help with both of them, I would like very little contact with you. Please don't contact me again outside of an emergency. I then blocked her from texting me. I know this isn't as dramatic of an update as you were hoping for, but I hope that someone can take something from it. I know it's only been a few days, but I have no regrets. Maybe going cold turkey with her was what I needed. Am I the jerk for correcting my stepdaughter's dad when he called me her nanny? I've been with my wife for 8 years now. She has primary custody of her daughter, Santana, who's 9. Santana sees her dad, Mark, every other weekend and some holidays. As I've been one of Santana's primary caregivers for the past 7 years, since I moved in with her mom, I've taken care of her more than Mark has, and we are quite close. My wife and I went on to have 2 kids together who are now 5 and 18 months old. I've been a stay-at-home dad since the 5-year-old was born. As a result, I'm the one making lunches, driving kids to activities, etc. That includes for Santana. Mark has always felt insecure about my place in Santana's life. I've always encouraged her relationship with her dad, while also being a place she can go to in order to vent about both her parents. I've never asked her to call me dad, but I've made it clear I love her the same as her siblings. And she's also said she loves me and considers me her second dad. Mark also mocks me for my stay-at-home dad role. My wife always shuts him down, and I just ignore him. He has in the past jokingly called me Santana's nanny, and I just roll my eyes and say, whatever you think, Mark. I really don't see him much, as my wife will take Santana to her dad's and pick her up. However, yesterday, my wife was sick and asked me to pick up Santana. She really couldn't get out of bed, and I knew Mark wasn't going to drive out to us. He's refused in the past. So I went over to his place to pick her up. He was throwing a barbecue and had some family there. I had never met any of them. Santana ran into my arms, excited to see me and shouting my name. A few people looked at Mark curiously. He laughed and said, "That's Santana's nanny." I shook my head and said, "I'm her stepfather, Greg. Nice to meet you all." Mark turned red and barely said goodbye to Santana. I didn't think much of it outside Mark just being Mark. However, Mark texted my wife later saying I humiliated him, and given I'd likely never see those people again, I shouldn't have said anything. My wife told him he's overreacting, and then texted me saying I had no right to correct him in his own home. My wife told him he's overreacting, and he then texted me saying I had no right to correct him in his own home. He asked what was the big deal in his family thinking I'm her nanny. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. But man, Mark must be feeling really insecure about himself, that's for sure. You're doing great, Greg. Santana is lucky to have you. My fiance doesn't want to invite his sister-in-law to our wedding because she has feelings for him, when it's more the other way around. My fiance, Will, has a younger brother, Charlie, who's 34, and he's married to Evie, who's 33. Evie is a beautiful woman both inside and out. She's one of the nicest people I've ever met, and she's an amazing and supportive friend. Maybe the best friend I've ever had. Will, Charlie, and Evie went to school together. Charlie and Evie have been together for 20 years. They married pretty much straight out of high school. During their time at school, Will and Evie went on to date before she started dating Charlie. Will had been hounding her for a date, and she eventually said yes to try and make Charlie jealous as she liked him but didn't think he felt the same way. Yes, completely aware this is ridiculous, but Evie was 13 at the time. Evie told me about this date pretty early on. She had wanted me to know in case I thought she had feelings for Will. She made it very clear that she's never had romantic feelings for Will, and that she just used him to get that one date to make Charlie jealous. I do know that Will had feelings for Evie, and from what he said, he stopped having them since we've been together. Will and I are currently in the process of planning our wedding for next summer. We've been putting together a list of who we want to ask to be a part of the wedding party and who we want to invite to the wedding. I want to have Evie as one of my bridesmaids because I know she'll be supportive and reliable. Will frowned and told me that he wasn't planning on Evie being part of the wedding. I asked if he had a falling out with Charlie and wasn't inviting him either, as they're a package deal as a married couple. Plus, there's no way one would attend without the other. He replied that he hadn't fallen out with his brother, but he couldn't see himself getting married with Evie there, as according to him, she still has feelings for him, and he wouldn't want it to ruin our day. I know for a fact that she doesn't. I asked him if she had confessed feelings or something. He said no, but it's the way she is with him. He gave examples like how she's always around our house. Evie and I run together 3 times a week. As I live closer to her work, she comes to ours to change instead of going home. How she'll make his favorite dessert when we celebrate Christmas at their place. His birthday is Christmas Eve. How she does little thoughtful things like dropping off baked goods for us, or how she takes an interest in things he's interested in. The 3 of them support the same football team. To me, none of this is Evie showing she has romantic feelings for him. She's just being a good friend. I told him this, but he's insistent on not inviting Evie to the wedding. I know that if Evie isn't invited, Charlie won't attend, and it will snowball further as the family are really close, but it will look like I'm the one causing this. I reached out to Evie after the conversation with Will, and I asked her to be honest with me if she had any sort of romantic feelings for Will. At first, Evie laughed at the idea of her having any sort of feelings for Will. She then admitted that until I met Will, he had made her uncomfortable, but it had lessened since we got together 2 years ago. She explained that Will would make comments about how they were more suited than her and Charlie. He used to send her drunk messages about how they belonged together. She told me that Charlie knew about the messages and they had pulled themselves away from Will during that period, but only allowed him back in when I started dating him. I asked her if he had sent her anything like that since we've been together. Evie went quiet on the phone before saying that he had sent her a message on the weekend when Will, Charlie, and some of their friends had gone out drinking. She had canceled on running this week but hadn't given me a reason, and it turns out she's avoiding Will. Charlie also hasn't been talking to his brother since the night out because of the message. She sent me that message and it was very, very bad. He told her that he wished he was the father of her baby. Evie's pregnant with their 4th, and not Charlie, and how he'd be a better dad than Charlie could ever be. I'm not sure what to do. I love Will, and he's convinced that Evie has feelings for him when she's made it clear that she does not. I thought Will had moved on, but he's now sending Evie messages. Is there anything I can do, or is this relationship just doomed? Edit. Not that it makes anything better. Will was 15 when they had the date. Evie is 6 months younger than her husband. She's 34 next month. I told Will that we need to talk when he comes back from taking his mom to an appointment this morning. It's nothing serious, just taking her to get new glasses. I think he knows I want to talk about Evie, as he asked if it was about Evie and the wedding. I said yes, and he sighed before telling me we would discuss it when he comes back. I'm gonna put together a weekend bag so I can leave quickly if I need to. I've texted Evie and Charlie to tell them I'm going to talk to Will about his behavior because it needs to change, and he needs to realize that nothing will ever happen with Evie. Charlie responded wishing me luck and has said that their house is open to me if I need it. He also apologized for me having to go through this, as they shouldn't have stuck their heads in the sand about this hoping it would go away. I know I should have brought this up after she told me, but I'm very non-confrontational and will try to avoid an argument if I can. Update. Will and I had a talk when he came back. I told him that I knew about the text he had sent to Evie on the weekend. He denied it straight away, telling me that she was lying, but quickly changed his tune once I started reading him the text. He then started to apologize and claimed it was just a moment of weakness after Charlie had been showing the group pictures from their family holiday last month. One of them had made a comment about Evie being out of Charlie's league, which reminded Will that he had lost his chance with Evie all those years ago. He then sent her the text. I asked him how he would feel if it had been Charlie harassing his partner, and he just lowered his head and said he would be upset, but that Charlie didn't deserve Evie. I told him that Evie wasn't an object to be given to whomever is deemed worthy of her, and that she chose Charlie, and that should have been enough for him. The fact there is someone out there who loves Charlie for who he is and makes his brother happy should be enough. Will told me that he was jealous of Charlie, as he has everything he wanted, and it wasn't fair because he's the eldest. Charlie did better than Will in school. He was better at sports. Charlie is more successful as he was able to do what he wanted. Will feels he had to do what his parents expected while Charlie could go to uni for whatever he wanted. Seeing Evie with Charlie is a reminder that Charlie has everything he wants. I asked Will if Evie was single and interested in him, would he leave me? Will refused to answer the question, but it was all I needed to hear. I told Will that I was going to stay elsewhere for a couple days while I figured out where I'll go because we are over. I don't want to stay living with someone who doesn't care about me. When I went to go and get the bag I packed, Will asked me if he could have the ring back as it's a family heirloom. It belonged to his grandma and was intended for whomever got married first, but when Charlie asked for it, Will apparently threw a massive tantrum over it, saying that it should be his since he's the eldest. I told him no, it was going to the person who it was meant to go to, Evie. I'm now at Charlie and Evie's for a couple days while I figure out getting a new place to stay or if I will move closer to my family. I work for myself, so that makes things easier. Charlie and Evie have decided they will be going low contact with Will. They would go no contact, but it would cause drama with the family and neither want that, especially Evie. Will called Charlie asking if I was with them, but Charlie told Will that he had no idea where I was. Charlie then proceeded to tell Will that they're going low contact with him because of the way Will has been towards Evie, and that he is now doing what he should have done years ago to protect Evie. Evie has apologized several times as she feels she's the reason my relationship has ended, but I have reassured her that the only person at fault here is Will, and I don't blame her for anything. If anything, she's a victim in all of this too. I've given her the ring, but she has said that I should give it back to mother-in-law as she doesn't want it. I wish I had seen Will's behavior before it got this far, but I was blinded by love. Looking back, I can see there were red flags that I just decided to ignore. Old guy swipes my shopping cart with his Prius, expects to trade vehicle insurance. I was getting ready for a home project and had picked up some corrugated steel roofing, a load of lumber, and 4 bags of construction sand from the local big box home improvement store. The lumber was over 12 feet long. Everything fit on one cart. My pickup truck was parked in the parking lot, and I planned to push the cart there to load it, just like hundreds of other customers do. There's a high awning in the store exit, and after that, there's the parking lot. There's no pedestrian painted crosswalk, but this is California. Parking lots are pedestrian right of way. Anyway, I check both ways before pushing this heavy, long, and unwieldy load into the parking lot. I let the Jeep coming from my right go by. The Prius on my left is a long way away, so off I go. I didn't realize how fast the Prius was going, almost 40 miles per hour. I had about 8 feet of lumber into the parking lot when he drove up on me. He swerved to miss, so he didn't hit me head on, but he did kiss the load of 4x8s with his right front quarter panel. The wood then laid a perfect crease all the way down the side of his shiny Prius, all the way back to his rear quarter panel. With 200 pounds of sand, another 200 or 300 pounds of wood, and maybe 100 pounds of steel, the cart didn't move. Heck, the wood wasn't even damaged. The driver stopped almost 30 feet away, put his car in park, and came to check the damage. He was old. Look, I'll be 60 this year, but I guessed he was easily 20 years older. Skinny, and looked like dried jerky, but spry enough and alert. We asked if each other were okay. He checked the damage on his car, and out of habit, I took photos of the damage, his license plate, my cart, and the area. Then he came up and asked to trade vehicle insurance. I laughed in his face. My truck is parked way over there. Why would I give you the insurance for it? He got upset and asked me how I was going to pay for his car. I pointed out that he technically hit a pedestrian in a pedestrian area, was going too fast, and saw me enter his path from 50 feet away. He had plenty of time to halt and let me cross. He was upset, then hit on the bright idea that maybe the store was at fault and liable for parking lot accidents, and said he was going to talk to the manager. After he left, I decided I wanted to stick around and see what happened, but I needed my stuff loaded, so I left my cart parked out of the way, brought my truck under the awning, and started loading. The old guy and a manager came out, and once the manager understood what happened, she explained how the store was not liable. He talked about suing the store, and she shrugged and told him to go ahead. The company lawyers would take care of it. But since he said lawsuit, she couldn't talk anymore, and she left. He came back over to me and asked, how was I going to make this right? I told him nicely that since I had no damage, I didn't need anything from him running into me. He said I ran into him, and that he was calling the cops. Okay, dude, you do that. I know something about the cops in this city. Unless there's something major, their response time can be measured in hours or never. So I went back and finished loading my truck, then I got in and sat in the AC to cool off. Finally, I wrote my name on a paper and my telephone number, I gave it to the guy and told him to give it to the cops when they arrived, and then I left. After about 5 hours, a cop called and asked to trade information about the guy, basically driver's license info. They were still at the store, and the guy sounded frustrated. So I read off the details of my license, and the cop read off the details of his license. No insurance info was traded. He just wanted to know who to sue. The cop emphasized the gentleman's birth date. That's when I learned he was 98 years old. Good on him for keeping his license. The cop emphasized this was a civil matter and the old guy could sue. I said I understand and look forward to it. And that's where we stand. I've still no court summons and no other action. My backyard goldfish pond is still in work. New neighbor demands I stop fishing because it's bad for the environment. I, 25 male, live in my family's cottage, which I was given ownership of. The cottage itself is a waterfront property facing a medium-sized lake. My family has been living here for generations, as my great-grandfather originally bought it before passing it down, eventually leading to me. My neighbors are a different story, as many of the people I have known since childhood have moved out. The houses that my neighbors once had have been torn down and replaced with designer-style homes. With the construction of these homes come new neighbors and an HOA, of which I am not a member of. My problem started with my next-door neighbor, Sophie. She's in her 50s or 60s, overfishing. One day, after doing some canoe fishing, I was approached by Sophie on my beach. She started asking if it was legal to fish on the lake, to which I said it was, as long as you paid the $25 per year license. After that, I said that I had to go, as I had caught some fish and I wanted to start processing them for dinner as it was getting late. After our conversation, I did not hear from her for over 2 weeks. My encounter with her this time was not in person, but through a letter. In this letter, she wrote about how dangerous fishing is to the environment and why I should stop. In response, I chose to simply chuck it in my recycling bin and ignore her as it wasn't worth my time. My most recent encounter with her was 2 days ago, while I had some friends over. It was in the afternoon when I had ran back into the house for some more beers along with one of my friends. While grabbing the drinks, we heard a knock at the door. When I answered the door, it was Sophie, and she had another letter. Before handing the letter over, she said that she had tried to be diplomatic, and now she has had enough and has a letter from the HOA. Admittedly, I was a bit tipsy at the time, and in response, I laughed and called her stupid for believing the HOA can do anything before closing the door on her. After sobering up, I felt conflicted. On one hand, I felt that I was justified in my actions because my fishing is none of her business. On the other hand, I feel that I could have dealt with her in a more tactful way. Am I the jerk? It's kind of ironic, as an individual fishing for their own food in a canoe is about as sustainable as it can get. Not the jerk. That is kind of blowing my mind. Oh, sorry, Sophie. Let me just jump in my car, drive to the store, and buy some fish that was shipped in from somewhere else instead. Is that better? Some states even have harassment laws protecting hunters and anglers from this type of behavior. You could potentially hold her for civil liability if the behavior continues. Not the jerk. She's bordering on harassment. Not only that, I'm sure she's lying, as the HOA knows you're not a member, which would mean that they can't do anything. Not only that, an HOA can't control how often and where you fish. This woman is the reason a vast majority of Americans refuse to live in an area with an HOA. Am I the jerk for getting an entire table for myself after my husband and his mom didn't save me a seat? I'll start this off by saying that I, female 32, have been with my husband Bob, male 39, for 3 years, married for 1. His mom has a habit of keeping me out of most of their functions with the excuse of, "You work too much." Not true, because sometimes I do make myself available, but yet find myself excluded. Last week, his mom invited us for a celebratory dinner at the restaurant after she completed her recovery. I had something to do on that day, but I let her and everyone else know that I'd be there at 8 p.m. Bob obviously knew I was coming. Thing is, when I arrived to the restaurant, I saw that the table was full. All chairs had been taken, and I just stood there with a complete puzzlement while Bob and his mom just stared at me. His mom then told me there was no place left for me, and that I could either have Bob get up and take his seat or go home. I was so upset, but instead of going home, I just went and took an entire table for myself. Bob and his mom watched with their eyes popping out of their heads like they saw something shocking. Not gonna lie, I did get weird looks from the guests, but so did Bob and his mom. It was awkward in all honesty. I had my dinner, dessert, then went home. I saw Bob and his mom staring grudgingly while I was making my way out. He got home an hour later and was yelling at me, saying that I embarrassed his mom in front of her guests. I yelled, asking what was I supposed to do after I got denied a seat, and he told me that it wasn't his nor his mom's fault guests arrived before me and took all the available chairs. I told him he could have saved me a chair. He said that I could have just left instead and reminded me that I was a guest and that I shouldn't expect this level of entitlement to be accepted. He then went on about how I ruined the entire dinner for him and his mom with what I did, and he's been pouting about it for days now. I don't get it. I really don't. Was my expectation really that entitled? I mean, as his wife, he should have saved me a seat, but clearly I'm missing something here. Not the jerk. OP, is this level of disrespect really what you want for the next 20 years? Not the jerk. They clearly excluded you and didn't help you get accommodated. This isn't some stranger, this is your husband, who had you eat dinner alone and then blamed you for what he did. Not the jerk. You are married to someone who values his relationship with his mother above you. He cares about how you made them look instead of how they made themselves look after denying you a seat. Here's what you do. 1. File for separation so you can start the divorce proceedings. 2. When he asks why you are going this route, tell him, I'm choosing to walk away because I deserve better than the crumbs you leave thrown to the floor behind you. While I love and value you, I am not loved or valued by you because that spot belongs to your mother. There have been too many instances in our relationship where you have proven your mother is your priority regarding common decency, respect, or love. Until you open your eyes and see your mother's manipulations for what they are, you will be alone. 3. Start therapy for yourself so you can begin to move on. You're only 32. You shouldn't have to waste your love on someone who doesn't want it. Give it to someone who will stand up, love, honor, treasure, and be faithful to you. There are men out there. Unfortunately, the one you chose is not it. If you want to make things work with him, therapy and boundaries must be set in place. If he allows those boundaries to be crossed too many times, you know you did what you could and walk away with a clear conscience. Good luck to you. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.